This lecture is on factoring trinomials, and here we have the form x squared plus bx plus c. So this is the easier of the two cases, and because we don't have a number here in front of our x squared. In our first example here, we have y squared plus 7y plus 10. And so what we want to do is we want to factor this 10 so that when we add the factors together, we get the middle number 7. So here's our middle number, positive 7, and that's what we want our factors to add up to. So there are a couple of different ways for us to factor 10, 1 times 10 or 2 times 5, but we want the factors to add up to 7, and the two numbers that would multiply to give us 10 and add to give us 7 are 2 and 5. So we're going to factor this as 2 times 5. So when we multiply our groups together, we want to end up with what we started off with. And so when we multiply binomials, remember, we're going to use FOIL. And so we would take y times y. So that gives us this y squared here. And then the numbers that go in here are the 2 and the 5. That was why we did this step over here, was to figure out what two numbers would multiply to give us this constant term and add together to give us our middle term that we need. So now when we would do FOIL, we would get 2y from multiplying the inners, and we would get 5y from multiplying the outers, and when we add those two together, we end up getting the 7y that we need in the middle. And so this factors as y plus 2 times the quantity y plus 5. Our next example, x squared minus 7x plus 6. So here, we want to take this positive 6, and we want to factor it so that when we add the factors together, we get our middle term, which is negative 7 this time. And so the two numbers that will multiply to give me positive 6 and add to give me negative 7, so we could use the 1 and the 6, or the 2 and the 3. 2 and 3 won't combine to give us negative 7 though, so it's negative 1 and negative 6. So these two numbers add to give me the negative 7 I need, and they multiply to give me the positive 6 that I need. So this one will factor as x, and then it's going to be minus 1 from here, and x, and a minus 6 from here. And if you want to check your answer, you can always do FOIL on this and just double check to make sure that you get back to what you originally started out with. In our next example, we have x squared plus 3x minus 4. So this time, we're taking this minus 4, and we want to factor it so when I add the factors together, I get the middle number, positive 3. And so there's only two ways to factor 4, 1 and 4, or 2 and 2. We can't use two 2's to get 3 though, so I need to use the 1 and the 4. And I want this 3 to be positive, so we need a positive 4 and a negative 1. So negative 1 times positive 4 gives me the negative 4 that I need. And when I add them, negative 1 plus 4 gives me the positive 3 that I need. So now to factor this, it's going to be x, and then the minus 1 from here, and then x, and then the plus 4 from here. So it factors as the quantity x minus 1 times the quantity x plus 4. On our next example here, 5x minus 14 plus x squared. So this is a case where you need to be really careful. You need to have it exactly in the form x squared, and then an x term, and then a constant. And you'll see they're out of order here, and we need to make sure that they're in that order. So I need to write my x squared first. And then here's my x term, so that's plus 5x. And then we have minus 14. So now we want to factor the constant, negative 14, so that when we add them together, we end up with the middle term, which is positive 5. So the two numbers that will add together to give me 5 and multiply together to give me negative 14. So it would either have to be 1 and 14 or 2 and 7, and it's going to be the 2 and the 7. I want a positive 5, so that means my 7 has to be positive, and my 2 is going to be negative. So this one will factor as x, and then minus 2 times the quantity x, and then plus 7. In our next example, we have a combination of a's and b's, and so this time when we do our factoring, we're going to need a as our first term in our factor, but here we need a b, not just a plain old number, so we're going to have a b behind our number this time. But other than that, the factoring is the same, and so what we want to do is we want to factor this number in front of the b squared, 40, so that when I add those two factors together, I get the number in front of the middle term here, the AB. So that's 13. Two numbers that will multiply to give me 40 and add to give me 13 are 5 and 8. And there are a lot of different factors of 40, and so you just need to go through them until you get the correct pair. And so this is going to factor as A plus 5b, so we get the 5 from here, and then a plus 8b, and here's where we get the 8 from. So our final answer is a plus 5b times a plus 8b. And that is the end of our lecture on factoring trinomials with a leading coefficient of 1. Let me know if you have any questions.